Tembalengo Sifago. I am coming from J.M. Dindwa High School. Welcome to the ECDoE broadcasting studio. Today's lesson is about Vietnam, which is the extension of the Cold War. The first topic, it will be the background, then we go to the Safe Village system, then to Operation Rolling Thunder and Operation Range Hand. Then now, let's look at the question. The tactics used by the Viet Cong were successful in making United States of America strategies ineffective during the Vietnam War between 1963 and 1975. Critically discuss the statement in the context of the military strategies that both the United States of America and the Viet Cong used in Vietnam between 1963 and 1975. You must support your line of argument with relevant historical evidence. Please be reminded, learner, that whenever you are meeting the topic during the examination, read the statement that is being provided, then you go to the instruction which says critically discuss. And remember, when it is critically discussed, it simply means that you must be looking at both sides of the topic. Your argument, it must not be one-sided, because if it is one-sided, then you will lose a lot of marks. It could be argued that the tactics used by the Viet Cong were successful in making United States of America strategies ineffective to a great extent. Now, remember, you are supposed to be taking a stance. As you can see there, to a great extent is what signifies that you have taken a stance that the tactics were successful to a great extent. The essay will be highlighting the background. It will demonstrate that Operation Rolling Thunder, Range Hand, Search and Destroy, Vietnamization were just a hit and miss, hence they were ineffective, while on the other hand, the guerrilla tactics and Tet offensive were very effective in winning the war. As you can see there is something that you must note. We said right at the beginning that the Viet Cong strategies made US strategies ineffective to a great extent. And now we are saying the Tet offensive and the guerrilla tactics were very effective in winning the war. So this tells us now that this essay will be discussing both sides of this essay or this event that we are covering. The essay will also show that the fall of Saigon in 1975 signaled the Americans, it signals that the Americans were defeated and unification of Vietnam resulted. Now, let's go to the background of the essay. We are now getting into the essay. After the Second World War, Vietnam was divided. So, it was divided into two. The North Vietnam was ruled by the Viet Minh and was supported by USSR and China. The South Vietnamese was ruled by Diem, and in 1960, Viet Cong demanded a national coalition government from Diem. Diem refused, and the Viet Cong launched a guerrilla campaign against him. Diem was overthrown and was replaced by many military rulers. The Viet Cong won the support of the local people because they gave land to the peasants and provided the infrastructure and building schools. So as you can see in this background, good people, it is important to note the key points that are here. The division of Vietnam is the key point. And after the division, there was a demand for the national coalition. Now, the question that we should be asking ourselves is to why there was a demand for the national coalition government. It is simply because it was agreed in the Geneva Conference that there will be elections, in which DM refused to hold. Hence now the guerrilla tactics by the Viet Cong were launched. Are we together, good people? Then now let's move to the first stage of this war. In 1959 to 1964, known as Insurgency and Escalation, America was alarmed by the Soviet support of the Viet Cong. It feared the domino effect. In 1961 to 1963, Kennedy introduced the Safe Village System. You must know that the Safe Village System, it was created because the Americans, since in the introduction, we have already explained that there were guerrilla attacks to the South government. So now what they wanted was to isolate the Viet Congs from the peasants so that they can be able to use their conventional tactics on them, so that they can use their technological weapons on them. Unfortunately, this was a dismal failure because the Viet Congs were able to hit around the peasants. They were able to work within those villages. So you can see now this strategy was totally ineffective, as we have stated right at the beginning, that we will state throughout the essay that these strategies were ineffective and were made by the Viet Congs to be ineffective, as we can see in this first strategy. Unfortunately, J.F. Kennedy was assassinated by 1963, and he was replaced by Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson believed that the war must be won by adding more people, more soldiers, more military weapons to Vietnam so that they can prevent the spread of communism in Vietnam. So now there was an incident in the Gulf of Tonkin. There was an incident in the Gulf of Tonkin where an American warship, which is known as Operation Maddox, was attacked. And Johnson used that as an excuse and persuaded the Congress to send more soldiers to Vietnam. As a result, by 1967, there were more than 500,000 American troops in Vietnam, and there were 3,500 Marines. So it means now there will be more weapons, there will be more technological weapons. Then there was the stage 2 of the war, which now the Americans launched Operation Rolling Thunder, which this was the aerial bombing which aimed at destroying the ports, the army bases and industries and army supplies in April 1965. This operation, however, it was successful in destroying the ports and the army bases and the infrastructure, but for the industries, it failed because Vietnam was an agricultural country which was exporting rice. This operation also did not stop the flow of men. So this is clearly indicating that this was a hit and miss strategy which was ineffective to win the war. So we can see here that the Operation Rolling Thunder was totally ineffective. Then let's go now to the other strategy that was introduced by the United States of America, which was Operation Ranch Hand. Operation Ranch Hand was the usage of chemicals where they wanted to destroy the weapons, the forests, so that they can be able to see the Viet Congs clearly. They introduced Operation Agent Orange. Operation Agent Orange aimed at destroying the forests and the leaves so that they can be able to see the Viet Congs and use their technological weapons on them so that they can use their conventional war tactics on them. But
Unfortunately, this strategy was ineffective. It did not attack the Viet Congs. It did not even affect the Viet Congs, but ended up affecting the innocent civilians because the Viet Congs were hiding in the trenches. You remember that they dug the tunnels where they were moving their supplies. So this one, it was totally ineffective. They also added Operation Agent Blue was there to destroy the agricultural products, that is your rice and the crops. The main idea, it was to starve the Viet Congs. But unfortunately, this operation was never effective because the Viet Congs were underground in those tunnels and were receiving the supplies from the north. They received food from the north and Russia. So it means now it only affected the innocent rather than affecting the Viet Congs. You can see there that this strategy was totally ineffective because the strategies that were used by the Viet Congs were so great. And they also added the poisonous gas, which was called napalm. And that napalm gas, it was there so that it can destroy the Viet Congs, but unfortunately, it ended up affecting breast cancer, burnt skin, and caused deformities to the civilians. The chemical warfare resulted in unintended consequences. It made Americans to be unpopular, and they ended up condemning the US, even the world. There were also some anti-war protests because now the civilians, the people that were not supposed to be affected, they were not. And the people that were supposed to be affected, they were not affected because they hid in the trenches. So in other words, the chemical warfare was ineffective because the Viet Congs never starved. They were never caught. They continued to receive the supplies from China, USSR, through the Ho Chi Minh trade. So for this part, good people, let's recap to what we have discussed. We have got into the background where we explained the division and we explained why there was the guerrilla attacks to the southern government. Then the safe village system failed because they could not identify the Viet Congs. Operation Rolling Thunder was a hit and miss strategy because the Viet Congs were underground. Operation Ranch Hunt did not affect the Viet Congs because the civilians were the ones that suffered rather than the Viet Congs. As you can see, good people, in this part, the Viet Congs strategies, clearly they made the Americans and their strategies, their technological weapons, their advanced weapons to be ineffective in this war. So this is the success for the Viet Congs, good people. Then for now, as we have already explained, the chemical warfare was totally ineffective for the Americans, but it was effective for the Viet Cong strategies. Now, the Viet Congs, remember, were using the guerrilla tactics, just like the hit and run tactics and hiding in trenches, the usage of the booby traps, which were very, very effective to the young and inexperienced soldiers of the United States of America, which depended on the usage of the conventional war tactics and were carrying very, very heavy weapons. For example, many Americans' legs were cut by booby traps and were killed by poisonous pythons. And that created a lot of fear to the people of America, or to the soldiers of the United States of America, because they were not used to this type of war, which is the guerrilla attacks. In 1968, despite the American bombing of the Viet Cong supply lines, and the Viet Congs were still able to launch the surprise guerrilla attacks on major towns in the south
and the American bases. The Tet Offensive was the one which was launched during the religious festival, where there was the high number of funerals that took place with traditional flutes, firecrackers, and coffins. And the coffins were used to camouflage, to carry weapons for the farmers who belonged to the Viet Congs. The Viet Congs used the weapons to launch a massive attack that night on about 100 cities which were controlled by the United States of America, including Saigon. And however, for as much as they attacked and won 80% of those towns, but they failed to deliver the knockout blow. They failed to deliver the knockout blow, but that played a massive role. That played a massive role to the American public, because now people began to create the anti-war demonstrations calling their soldiers to come back. So they failed to deliver the knockout blow, the Viet Congs, but it was effective because the public opinion began to change. And the American troops, now angered by the Tet Offensive, they embarked on the search and destroy tactics, which took place in the village of My Lai, where they heard that this place hid many Viet Congs and they wanted to destroy them. They carried out this mission believing that this village were the headquarters of the Viet Congs, and they killed about 300 people, including women. Unfortunately, after killing such number of people, it was only discovered that there were only 3 Viet Congs. So you can see there that the guerrilla tactics of the Viet Congs were effective, whilst the America's search and destroy was totally ineffective, because it ended up killing innocent people. You can imagine soldiers raping innocent children, killing women, killing old people, just to try and find the Viet Congs, but they failed. And now, after this search and destroy, the United States of America launched the Vietnamization, because now they could see that this war cannot be won. In this Vietnamization, they will teach the South American soldiers to deal with the Viet Congs so that they can gradually remove the soldiers of the United States of America and leave the Vietnamese people fighting their war. So you can see there that the United States of America is totally ineffective in trying to destroy the Viet Congs, because they were always outsmarted by the Viet Congs during the Vietnamese War. So now let's get to the final push. In 1973, it was agreed there must be a ceasefire. Despite the ceasefire, the America continued to send the supplies to the South until 1975. In 1975, the Viet Cong were victorious in the South and captured the Saigon. In 1976, Vietnam united under communist rule. So you can see even the Paris Peace Agreement was unsuccessful, because eventually the United States of America failed to stop the spread of communism. By 1975, Saigon fell, which means now the country was united under the communist rule with Ho Chi Minh as their president. So now, to sum up, indeed, the Viet Cong strategies that they used during the Vietnamese War were effective in making the United States of America's strategies to be ineffective. You can see that during the safe village system, they failed to identify the Viet Congs,
because the Viet Congs hid around the peasants and they could not be found. Operation Rolling Thunder was a hit and miss. It did not affect the Viet Congs. It ended up affecting the innocent. Operation Ranch Hand, the chemicals did not affect the Viet Congs because the Viet Congs were hiding under the trenches. Then the Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive was successful because the American public turned against the US soldiers, calling them the rapists of children as they raped innocent people in the search and destroy in My Lai village. Then the United States of America tried the last strategy of training the Vietnamese soldiers to try and combat and prevent the spread of communism in Vietnam. But that also failed because eventually the North invaded the South and the country was united under a communist rule. So you can see we have clearly demonstrated to everyone that the Viet Cong strategies were effective, whilst the United States of America's strategies were totally ineffective. Thank you very much. We are done for this topic. We have come to the end of our lesson. You can leave your questions on the comments. Don't forget to leave the name of your school so we give a shout out. Please share, recommend, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. See you in the next lesson. Thank you. Bye.